All right, gang, we are live. This is the Not a Podcast show. I am not a podcast host. You can check me out more at ShawnOngley.com, where you can navigate to the value for value, where I accept Bitcoin and money for all the free content that I do. You can also support my business, which is Held Gear, HELD gear.com. And you're listening to my new music, which I just put out, and you can hear that on SoundCloud. So that's all my plugging to do. Joining us on the Not a Podcast show today is Texas Slim of the Beef Initiative. And I'm very excited to talk about agriculture, economics, and all the stuff that goes into the whole area of raising cattle and food production and all that. And so without further ado, let me bring him on. Texas Slim.
Hello, Shawn. How's it going, bud?
Good. Great to have you.
Glad to be here.
Thank you very much for joining me.
You bet.
I've actually been pretty excited about this talk because it's been going around. These topics have been going around on podcasts, and I'm always wanting to jump in. When I listen to podcasts, I'm always kind of having my own conversation, you know?
Sure.
And I just feel like people are getting it wrong one way or another. That's my opinion.
If we want to generalize in sense, yes, and especially if it involves social media, yeah, usually the perspective is wrong, the perception is wrong, and the conversation is usually off base of really not what should be discussed. It's usually a distraction that usually filters into the viral mode. So I see that a lot within agriculture. I see a lot with the food supplies, and a lot of times people are discussing the wrong things when they should be looking in a different direction.
Yeah, and so I named this episode "Standing on Common Ground" because I take usually the first thing that comes to my mind, and that made the most sense to me. It's a little bit of a pun because it's all about what you're all about is soil, improving the soil with livestock, which is like the opposite of monocropping. To feed livestock is a whole madness. But the thing is, like, as we were talking before the show, I come historically from the left wing, and the left wing is all in on veganism and vegetarianism to solve climate crisis and all this kind of stuff. And it's a lot to dissect. And being the owner of a vegan brand, Held Gear, I understand and appreciate some of the value that the vegan community and argument brings. So I hope to represent both sides the best I can for this. So tell us, what is the Beef Initiative and what is your aim? What are you getting? Yeah, what are you trying to do?
It's a broad question, but anyways, I'll do the best I can. The Beef Initiative does a lot of different things. One thing I get asked every day is, what is the Beef Initiative? And I think that's the wrong, really.
It's a tiresome question, but we have to do it.
Well, it's a tiresome question. It's a tiresome answer because I'm not going to define the Beef Initiative. What I tell people is the Beef Initiative is about relationship building. In relationship building that is based on trust and honesty and truth. And so by saying that, you know, here I am, I'm a 7th generational Texan. I come from Texas. I come from growing up eating beef. I've grown up in the Texas Panhandle. It's cattle country. It is agricultural country. That's all, you know, that's all I knew growing up. And so whenever I talk about beef and it being the Beef Initiative, well, the Beef Initiative is basically, it's one other way I could explain it is that it's about pure, clean food that is decentralized. And it's, you know, going back to your comment about owning a vegan brand, I'm from Texas, you know, and I talk about beef. And that's what else would I talk about? That's my expertise. That's what I know. That's what I consume. That's what I grew up with. That's what I consume to this day. I make no bones about it. But that doesn't mean that I'm a carnivore. It doesn't mean that I follow all this type of arguments of diets and nutritions. I don't. What I do is I believe in basically the cow and what it truly is and what it has truly been for this nation and what it's been for the history of man. And by saying this, this is not a carnivore and a veganism or vegetarian argument. And one thing it is about saving children's lives with pure nutrition that comes from pure and clean food. Everything else is a distraction. Everything else is either a political argument or an idealistic argument. I don't get into those. I encourage everybody to basically feed themselves with the best nutrition that they can find. And I know that what we've done in at least the last 50 years and even 75 years has taken us away from human health and basically given us a state of affairs that is metabolically bankrupt in this country. And so, as far as consumption, it's about consumption models, what you choose to consume on audio, video, and your food. So, we could go for days what the beef initiative is, but that's a kind of a good outline.
I am a meat eater. I
Right.
try to be a conscientious one. Like, I don't like the idea of the mistreatment of any beings. When we talk about domesticating or what is the word for animals that are livestock? Is it just call them livestock, I guess. It's just the mistreatment. I'm from California, and people don't understand maybe how much agriculture, and a lot of people just think of Hollywood and gold in the hills and entertainment and it's just stuff and the beach. People don't think about how many cows are raised. And one thing I always notice driving down the freeways and the highways, especially one farm that I've seen every time you drive by, it smells like absolute trash. The cows are all huddled together. It's filthy. And that that's not a happy environment. But then you go to other farms and you see cows grazing and they look happy.
Sure.
We are domesticated animals. We shove ourselves into cubicles. We put ourselves on a clock and we work ourselves to death. So we treat other beings the same way we treat ourselves. I don't see that much difference in it. Do you see what I'm saying there?
Yeah, I do. I mean, there's a lot of reflection on how a society treats its environment and how it treats itself. And there was something. What you're talking about is factory farming and ranching. That's what you're talking about. You see a feed yard. That's what they're doing. They're taking a cattle. All cattle start on grass. All cattle start grazing, and then there's protocols that people and ranchers follow as far as to steward that animal. That's what you were trying to find. You're saying domesticated. No, it's stewarding an animal. We steward animals in different ways all across the world. And in the United States, when we first started out as a nation, we stewarded an animal by letting it graze until the time it was going to be harvested. And then, throughout the years, we've basically stewarded an animal in different ways. And these days we have thrown in factory farming, and that really kicked off in the last 50 years, especially after 1971. So, factory farming is a feedlot. And so what you do is you feed a cow, usually about 3 months, and you get it to being a fat cow. That's what they call it, is a fat cow. So, and then you have other people that actually do factory farming, but they do it in a more healthy way. You'll take the cow on grass and they'll still continue. Whenever you get into factory farming, what you're doing is you're finishing it off of grain. And right now in the United States, you're finishing usually off a grain that is produced by global feed companies, grain companies, agriculture companies. And we'll just throw, the biggest one out there right now is basically, Bayer, which is, owns Monsanto. And so you have grain companies, you have chemical companies that are all one and the same. So a lot of people don't understand what the consumption model of those cows are. And you can look at the beef industry in the United States where the consumption models are varied. They're different. Some of them are corrupt. Some of them are very perfect, head on straight into the welfare and care of that animal. What we do is we generalize as a nation on most everything. But if you want to look at the reflection of our food supply right now, just look at the people that actually consume the food in which we do produce. And you'll see a reflection that, sometimes you go through certain types of stewarding an animal. Well, that animal is basically metabolically bankrupt before it does get harvested. Some of those animals are basically in the best shape of their lives whenever they get harvested. And so I say harvest. Well, and then you look at our society. Well, we're unhealthy. 78% of us are metabolically bankrupt. We're all obese or overweight. 1 out of 2 of us is now diabetic. or we're going into diabetes. And so you look at the history of society, you look at the history of of basically, I'd say, nations, or whatever you want to tell your countries, and you can always tell that the strength of that society was based on how they treated their animals. And so, I can say that, and you can say that about the feed yards. Well, then everybody goes into the vegan argument. Well, no, they're basically, people that are vegetarian or vegan, it's a great lifestyle choice if you can maintain that lifestyle choice on your nutrition. But most people don't, because they eat from a monocropped type of food production.
That let's pause right there, because this is where the crux, this is the common ground I think most people should get on. It's
Right.
It's unbelievable how much garbage vegans are willing to eat. It's
Yeah.
true. It's true. I mean, there's like a joke out there. It's like, it's so bad, it's got to be vegan. It's like, but there's also amazing, delicious meals that I prepare for myself that are vegan, but it's all from fresh food. I don't go
Sure.
out and I just generally avoid grain that's, I mean, okay, I'm on a budget. I do my best.
Right.
It's
All
tough.
we are, right?
Like, so one vegan argument that I see a lot is, if you had to kill the animal, you would never eat it. Like, you're using the word harvest, and a lot of vegans would be offended by that, because it sounds like it would be, you're equating it to a vegetable. But I'm fine with I'm not offended by anything. I should be offended by everything, because I have like friends from all sides of life. So everybody's talking shit on one of my friends all the time.
Right.
And so, but like, I really believe that once you learn how to have a relationship with an animal, and then I've never had to kill one on purpose, other than flies and roaches and whatnot. But like, so you've killed plenty of cows in your life, yeah?
Well, not personally. I mean,
Okay.
I've represented, and then I've been there. I've seen them as they take their last breath. You bet.
Yeah.
I've honored many animal that has lost their life, from elk to deer to anything that I've consumed at times. You bet, man. And that's one thing that I believe 100% that it is lost in the argument of how we got here. We didn't get here by eating berries. We didn't get here by eating grass. We didn't get here by eating just plant-based vegetarian food. We got here, and of course there are societies that have sustained and maintained and evolved by eating certain types of forage, basically, but the United States didn't, and most of the world didn't. So if you look at how they did consume and how they did harvest, or if you want to say kill, we'll say kill, how they killed those animals. Well, it's usually done with some honor and some respect, and they gave that respect to that animal, and they respected what they actually killed. Then they respected and honored their basically consumption of that animal, because that's where they found their strength, and that's how they did. You look at the Native Americans in the United States, it was the bison, and we know what happened to the bison, because we came in there as the Westerners came in there, foreigners to the land, and we basically decimated a species of animal, and we did it with a lot of disrespect. And so throughout history of man, once again, you're going to see disrespect and respect, and you're going to see people that do not understand history as far as consumption and food, and people that truly understand it down to the T on how we got here and how you can truly honor what you consume. And you get a lot of with my type of regenerative protocol, in which we like to stand by within the Beef Initiative. Everybody that is in that protocol, in that cycle, vertical integration of consumption of that animal, it's all based about respect, honor, and how to steward and how to give those animals the best life that they can.
So I think that you're touching on what I think is the best argument against, if you had to kill it yourself, you wouldn't. Which is, if it's the decentralization argument. When you're dealing with a factory farm, the owner, the people generally who are like, we're talking about huge operations. So you have executives separated from the farmers, right?
Yeah.
Am I wrong about this?
Man, it's complex, but I'll straighten steer you where we need to steer, for sure.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm Tyson executives have nothing to do with the process of physically
Stewarding, no, they don't have anything to
no.
do with
So I don't
anything.
buy Tyson chicken.
No, that's
Eh,
not chicken anymore. So,
right. Like, but on the beef tip, I'll give you an example. At Aldi, I can go. I don't know if you're familiar with that store.
I haven't been to California for many years now. Well, not
Oh,
many, but anyways, for a reason.
I'm in Philadelphia today,
Oh, okay.
but yeah, I spent most of my life on the West Coast,
Gotcha.
and so I've driven up and down and seen these horrifying farms. But then all around Oregon, there are these beautiful green pastures with cows completely chilling. Like, there's a sustainable way to do it. So anyway, what I was getting at though is, oh, sure, I lost my
Let
train of
me
thought.
let me put it in perspective, and I see where you're going
Oh,
with
I was
this.
talking
You
about
talk about
Aldi. I was
okay,
talking about
Aldi.
a pound of beef I can get for
Okay.
$5.50, grass-fed beef
Mm-hmm.
that's labeled organic. I looked a little closer and I saw a product of Australia, Uruguay, and or USA, and I just thought that's still not good enough for me. Like, you're talking about flying meat somewhere, and then assembling it somewhere, and then grinding it from these different sources. That sounds it's better than the pure, like a McDonald's burger, but it just doesn't sound like
Well,
I don't
that's
know.
any food you eat. I mean, you can say catfish, you can say chicken, you can say beef, you can say tomatoes, you can say anything. I mean, you
It's
look at,
crazy. There's so much.
well, that's how far separated we are from our food.
Our
You,
economics are so built in to centralize the wealth and the
hmm
that we're sending food off and then import we're exporting the same foods we're importing. It's just so complex. It's insane.
Well, it's because food is turned into a commodity. It's turned into subsidies, and it's basically it's a part of a global system that is now in there. They make no bones about it that it's a one world food group, and that's what they want people to be able to consume, and they want people to accept it, and people do accept it because they think it tastes good. And
Right.
so there's a lot of tricks, there's a lot of labeling laws, there's a lot of ingredients laws, there's a lot of chemicals that they put into our foods that people don't even know anything about. And that's all because it's way that you can, anytime you're eating a highly processed food in the United States of America, you are basically eating some fake commodity that never needed to be in that food to begin with. But what we've done as a nation is we went ahead and consumed it and say, well, that's okay because they say it's safe. Well, it's not safe. It's not good for your health. Like I say, in the last 50 years, we're metabolically bankrupt. And you can tell and you can look at the health of a nation, and you can start from 1971 all the way into right now. And this has never happened in the history of man.
So what happened in 1971?
Well, we went off the gold standard at one time.
Right.
We debased our dollar. And anytime a society debases their monetary system, well, guess what? The food debases as well. So we incorporated a lot of fake commodities in the 70s to our food industry. From, I always saw rapeseed is one of them, which is canola. And canola has no business being in your food.
No.
It's not a vegetable.
I'm working through my last bottle of canola oil.
Why don't you just throw it away?
I'll be okay.
Okay, well, half measures of L is nothing. But anyways, you look at canola. It's rapeseed. What is rapeseed? Well, it's a weed. In 1956, the FDA outlawed it for any type of human consumption. Well, by the 70s, we got to where we could actually take out some of the poisons and toxicity of that rapeseed, and we turned it into something called vegetable oil, and we really hit the market hard, and we basically, evil and demonized animal fat and animal protein, and we said that you need to go on a fat-free diet. And so we basically targeted the nation, and we targeted especially, heritage women in general, saying you just need to eat this salad with all this oil, and then you're gonna get that body that you want. You're gonna be healthy. Well, that was the biggest lie that they've ever done and perpetuated on our society when it comes to our health. And we're finally truly starting to see the effects of basically the consumption model that they changed with the food pyramid, demonizing animal fats, and then saying everything needs to be fat free. The best thing you can eat is animal fat. It's the healthiest thing that got us here, and people live in denial. And I know when it's denial, and I know when it's based on facts, or I know when it's based on idealistic, thoughts and behaviors. And so,
Yeah,
I mean, you can't argue with it.
There's a range of good oils out there. Grapeseed, right? That's good. Yeah. Olive oil.
I don't know, man. I don't touch oils,
Okay.
man. I
All
use
right.
tallow. I use animal fat.
Okay. All right. You're a purist then.
Well, of course. Why would I use anything that has to be compressed and gone through in an industrial processing center? Why would I want to consume something that has to go through the same process that motor oil does? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Does anybody know the history? I'll tell you the little history of vegetable in the country, and then everybody can make their own decisions with this. 1900, Procter and Gamble made the most candles in the world. They were the candle maker of the world. Well, all of a sudden they quit making candles. Those candles were made out of cottonseed. Why did they quit making candles in 1900s? Because we had electricity. And so electricity was replacing the candle. Well, they had a plethora of amount of cottonseed oil. Well, they compressed it down and they basically said, well, we're going to turn this and make it look white because it looks like lard. And what they did is they invented Crisco.
Yeah.
And so in 1900, we started advertising and marketing vegetable oil as something that the farm needed to replace and the heritage woman needed to replace because it was going to make her more international. It's going to make her more desirable. And if you look at the marketing sequences that have happened throughout the time since 1900 until where we are right now, and how they market food and how they create this idealistic view of what they should be consuming, you'll see the deception. You'll see the decline in health. You'll see a decline in many things because cotton isn't a vegetable, but they call it vegetable oil, and you can say grapeseed. Yeah, it might be something that might be a good oil. People say avocado oil. Well, they don't understand that most avocado oil or most grapeseed oil, the way that it is shipped, the way it is stored, room temperatures, there's so many factors that make it rancid. And then what do? You eat it. And then usually a lot of oils, if you look really deep and you want to get into the science of oils, if you heat that oil, it becomes toxic. And whenever something is toxic and your body has to process it, what does it do? It stores it as a fat cell.
Yeah, so many people don't even understand this. It's unbelievable. People cooking high heat with olive oil, they're just hurting themselves.
Yeah, they really are. But they think it's good because it's olive oil. And olive oil is great, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
You go to Italy, man. You could go to Greece. Heck yeah, man. I'm going to get some good bread and some olive oil and I'm going to have a heyday.
And
sure.
And back in the day, they didn't have industrial machines, but they were producing olive oil.
Yeah.
There are these oils that are naturally produced. And decentralization truly is the way to recover this. There's this idea that basically it's so hard to explain and analyze. I think it's just but the phenomenon is basically to set the table. Set the argument. So you get an argument put out by an influencer on social media, or back before social media, it was television, put out a news report, or then before that radio, before that newspapers. There's always been an influencer to get the argument going. Then that divides us because it sets the table to the argument between two different arguments. But when you start talking about decentralization and family owned everything, basically, then it changes the entire nature of the argument, because the way that we're arguing about this, the way Bill Gates and says, oh, we're going to have to start eating synthetic meats. And even Joe Rogan was saying this the other day. And I'm like, what? Like, Rogan, you really believe that there's not enough land here and there's too many people in this massive country to decentralize our system and get to where, rather than, like, look, in Philadelphia in the 1960s, where I live in Philly, I watched this video about blight. Blight was already becoming a problem here by the 60s. And this video is about that. And it kind of like talks about the range of people that lived in Philly at that time. And there was a farmer with 50 acres in the city limits. Right now, I can go down to the creek and spot a deer and some turtles and bullfrogs and really exotic birds, because this city is actually still very green. But it wasn't that long ago. A 50-acre farm can produce a lot of food. Maybe not enough for all of Philadelphia, but definitely enough for like.
It doesn't have to produce food for all of Philadelphia. That's
Right,
what
right.
people.
Exactly.
And
We
you're
all have to
making a
stop
point.
producing food. It's like the attitude is we all have to stop producing food in order to eat. That's insanity.
Well, I didn't hear Mr. Rogan say anything about that. And what is the facade is in 1971, Eric Butts of the Nixon administration, he told the farmer of America in the rancher, he said, "Hey, everybody, you're going to go big or you're going to go home." Well, what did he mean by that? It means you're going to do one crop. It's going to go fence to fence, and we're going to go feed the world. That was their big moniker back then, is we're going to feed the world. Well, at that time, every little town, every city either had one, depending on the size of the city. If it was a 1,500 population of a small Texas town, it had a processing center. Okay, that's where they got their meat, and it was local. If you had a city like Chicago or New York or Philadelphia or Dallas or Fort Worth, well, you had multiple processing centers, and most of the beef there that people consumed in that city was stewarded, and it was raised, and it was harvested, and then it was basically the market access of that beef or that animal protein was to the community itself. It wasn't to China. It wasn't to South Korea. It wasn't to Japan. It wasn't to Europe. It was to the people that were living on the soil, living close to the land, and everybody was able to always feed their communities. You can go around the state of Texas right now, and there's over 200 processing centers, micro processing centers, abattoirs is what they call, that were basically mothballed because we went into a more of a global push to feed the world. And so anybody that has this argument that we can't feed the world by basically feeding your community first is full of shit. And they don't know what the hell they're talking about and what it is. It's a narrative that is being pushed by mainstream media my whole life. And there is absolutely no proof whatsoever that you cannot use the land and steward the soil, let the land tools, the animals themselves regrow the soil and keep it strong and feed your community. It's how we got here. It's how it's always been done. It's not a population game, and it's not a land mass game. I drive around the country. I've been around this country 9 times, probably 10 now, in a vehicle. And I guarantee you, we do not have a land shortage. We don't have agricultural shortage in the United States. Most of the agricultural that we use in the United States right now, that food doesn't even stay in America. So for anybody to sit here and say that we don't have enough land to feed the United States or the world, they don't know what they're talking about. And it's a non-argument. And the people that make it an argument, they're not doing anything. They're not doing any good for anybody out there to have the right perspective and the right perception about what food is, how it is prepared, how it is stewarded, and what is the market access to that food. In the United States of America, we don't even have complete market access to our own beef. We ship it. We don't. The globalists ship it overseas. And so if you put things in perspective, we don't have a food shortage. What we have is we have a lack of market access to pure animal protein and pure produce.
And all of that is protected by the state. That's not a system that happened on its own. It's a system that was boosted and elevated by the state, created by government policy. It's not what happened because this is what people wanted. It didn't happen because this is what was natural to the market or natural to people.
Right.
Not at all. And when you have mega billionaires going around just sweeping up land, like I was trying to buy land before the pandemic, if we want to call it that.
The marketing plan that they hit on us.
It's YouTube, so I can't be dangerous.
Yeah, the global marketing plan that happened. Yeah, that's what I call it. The global marketing plan.
So that, like, I was looking to buy land, and I was seeing just incredible bargains around Philly. I was getting excited, and then I saw it happen. Like all the plots that I was looking at, gone, like
Yeah.
within months. And then a month or two later, I hear this story: Bill Gates just bought all the farmland. I'm like, oh, I guess that's what just happened. I just,
Yeah. This
and
is a
then everything
10.
doubled. Everything that I'm looking for
Yeah.
now within 2 to 5 acres has doubled over the course of 2 years.
Yeah, this is
And
happening, and this is what I tell people right now is this was already planned. Trump was a distraction. This last they had a major consolidation of global food groups in 2017 and 18. They had a major consolidation of chemical companies in 2017 and 2018. At
yeah.
that time, they got the marching orders saying this is what we're going to do. There's going to become a time where we're going to have major asset reallocation. That's what this land grab has been, is asset reallocation. It happens during cycles of monetary distress, just like in the housing crisis, and it's happening basically the last since the global marketing plan. That's what's going on. You have BlackRock buying residential areas. You have Bill Gates buying farmland. People don't even realize it, that the last 2 years, China bought 200,000 acres as well of farmland in the United States. And so, what's going on is a major global industrial food shift, and how they're going to be able to pull it off on the level that they want to is because people are idealistic and they think that it's based on climate change. And so that's their marketing plan. And with climate change, what you have to do is become a good consumer. And so therefore they're going to make the cow basically a carbon hazard, which it is not. It's probably one of the best things for carbon sequestration that there is. But once again, people are so separated with what is the truth and the reality of what food is, what soil is, and how we got here. And what they do is they spend too much time listening to the globalists, too much time listening to centralized media, and they do not put their boots on the ground to go understand where food truly comes from and what they need to be sourcing in their market access that they need to create for themselves and their family.
So, like, as I mentioned before, I am historically left wing. I'm like, but to me, what is the classical liberal now? What is the classic
Well,
liberal has become, hold on,
yeah.
has become like civil. It's become a different thing. I my lamp is okay. We're all right. I think the air conditioner went on and my electric was acting weird. Um, uh, the traditional liberal is gone. It's like been replaced with a completely identity based thing, and it's weird. But like 15 years ago, Portland, Oregon, the most progressive city in the country, uh, everybody was shop local, buy local, local farms. We have the
Yeah.
best, probably the best farmers market network in the country. The biggest, cleanest city parks.
Yeah.
Um, marvelous work that city did over the course of time to make a more decent, and it was run by anarchists. That city was run by anarchists
Mm-hmm.
back in that when I moved there. Most shops were owned by local musicians and artists and stuff like that. It was just totally different. But I still think the cognitive dissonance is going to catch up with them because they still think that way, and they should think that way. Definitely buy local. Buy when you buy one of my belts, for example, one of my vegan belts, which by the way, most belts are vegan. People don't even know that because they're buying Chinese crap that's made from particle dust
Right.
and wrapped
Pretty
with
much.
vinyl.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're willing to do that because it kind of looks like leather and it's $20. But listen, if you but then if you go to Macy's and you can buy the same product, or all I'm saying is that I have a product that's in the same price range as a Chinese made fake leather unit, um, that will not last long. The buckles are going to break, the straps are going to crack, all this stuff. And I'm not trying to advertise my thing. The point is, if you spend that money on my product, almost all of it stays in the community, and absolutely all of it stays in this country. All my sourcing is American. I support basically like this, all kinds of people along the way, and then by the time the final product is given to me, that dollar is being distributed. Every dollar is being distributed locally. So it's like people then they go by Amazon. They they think that they're fighting climate change and they're for the environment, but then they're buying things on Amazon, they're going down to the supermarket, they're doing all these things. I think
Yeah.
the cognitive dissonance it will catch up with, again, back to the left, and they'll realize that this monocropping, that this Beyond Meat is just more monocropping. I really don't understand how they can ignore that already.
Well, they can ignore it because it's called being, you talk about social engineering is what you're talking about, especially with the Liberal Party. I grew, most of my years, whenever from 19 on until about 3 years ago, my home base was Austin, Texas. Very similar, not as progressive basically as Portland, but a lot of the same stuff, a lot of the same old hippie type of adage, that came out of the 60s and 70s and, flourished and, had that liberal point of view and great farmers. Where's Whole Foods from? It's from Austin, Texas. That's where it originated.
Yeah, that's right.
There on 9th and Lamar. And
Speaking of
so,
Amazon.
yeah, exactly. And so
And
right
they
there,
bought up Wild Oats, which was a Portland, I think a Portland based.
Yeah. Well, the game has changed. And what we have had is a lot of social engineering where a lot of people don't even know why they have those, they don't know the history of the Liberal Party. And actually, to be liberal is not what it is today from the past. If you look historically at a liberal stance, it was very independent. It was, live and let live. There's a lot of things that were very positive about a liberal viewpoint.
It's hard to say liberal without thinking of the word liberty. And it seems to me that the people who are more liberal in the classical sense are a lot of the younger libertarians that I, talk to on Twitter and stuff.
Yeah.
They have no problems with, they don't want to see massive corporations supported by the state gobbling up their communities. They don't like to see people told they can't marry each other or whatnot. There's just that whole notion that libertarians are these crazy right-wing corporatists. It's a total myth at this point.
Well, it's always been a myth, and it's so simple as far as solutions here, and it's daunting to me from somebody that does not watch TV. I don't listen to radio. I don't watch news programs. I eliminated it out of my life. I have channels in which I check into. I guarantee I can know what's going on in this world and within 5 minutes, and I can be informed. And I'm not watching Fox News or CNN or anything else. And so what you do is you look at our food and our consumption model all the way around, from food to audio to video. Well, you know what? We're the ones that are perpetuating the lies because our consumer demand is addicted to what they're feeding. From food to audio to video. And so I don't even join the arguments anymore because what it is, it's midstream and you're talking in a vacuum. So what I do is I get to dollar. I get to the source of the seed of the issue, sources of the seed of the solution, and then it's where I create my destination, and everything else in between is how you get there.
That's what I totally agree. Like, I've always believed in the idea of so-called voting with your dollar. Of course, I think that's even like kind of the wrong way to look at it. It's just like, take care of yourself and your community. And that it's not about voting on a topic. It's about doing what's right. And
well, it's a value for value exchange. You brought that up. It's like, hey, this is not a podcast show. And what you do is you accept, somebody that thinks it's valuable, they want to give you, value for value exchange. Maybe it's Bitcoin, maybe it's some fiat, whatever it is. It's not a consumption. What it is, it's an exchange. So I tell everybody in the world, I'm the world's worst consumer, man. I suck. I've always sucked at consuming things. As far as materialistic things, I'm not that guy, man. I travel with the backpack. I don't like a lot of things. It's just who I am. But on that note, what I like to call myself is an exchanger of quality and value. If I find something I find value with, I'll try to exchange it, whatever we agree to. That's between me and another person, usually, is what I try to do. A peer-to-peer exchange that is somewhat decentralized as much as I can make it. I don't have to work. I don't shop on Amazon. I don't do all that kind of crap. I don't have a big wardrobe that I have to put together through, all these global manufacturing and mercantile type of places. What I do is I keep it as simple as I can.
Yeah. And so to bring it back to like that pound of beef from Aldi, It's
Well,
that's
I can
me
tell you a
voting.
story on that one
Okay.
if you want to, and then I can tell you a story on a salad, and
Sure.
we can compare, and they're going to be
Well,
the same story.
well, it's like, okay, I think I was deceiving myself. It's probably it's got to be healthier than the cheapest beef.
Of
It's got to
course it
be because
is.
it is
Of course it
grass-fed,
is.
organic. And Australia, Uruguay, United States, these are not horrible places to
No,
source beef.
no, there's good beef in Australia. There's good beef in Africa, man. That's not the argument here, though.
So, right. So, my hope is that by being willing to spend that one extra dollar per pound on that beef, that they are sourcing somewhat more decentralized, somewhat smaller farms. But I don't know that, and
It's not even
ultimately,
relative, though, and that's
yeah.
what people don't
Okay,
understand.
so tell me the story.
Okay, well, let's look at how many touch points does that ground beef have in it?
I
You can't even, you would never even be able to explain,
no,
would you? Let's
no,
say it's from Australia, okay?
yeah,
All right, well, how do you harvest a cow? Well, you have to kill it, right? Well, then you have to basically do something. You're either going to have to wet age it, dry age it, or something. And so there's a process of curing an animal after you've killed it, right? And so if it comes from Australia or it comes from Africa, Uruguay, wherever it is, South America, well, you're not going to basically build in any type of quality into that animal. So it doesn't matter that it's grass fed from Australia. Good. Let the Aussies eat that grass fed beef. That's what they need to be eating. And there's no reason that a company in the United States should be basically buying beef from overseas. But do you know why we do it? It's
because
because we ship them
yeah,
overseas.
right.
And you know, we ship all of our
This is
quality beef because we do. The United
mm,
States, no matter what you want to say, still grows the best beef in the world
yeah,
by far, by none. As a collective, here we go. I'm not going to get in this big argument, but as a collective, we still raise the best beef in the world. Well, that quality beef is shipped to China, South Korea, Japan, and to Europe to the highest bidder.
right.
Okay, that's what
Big,
happens in the
delicious,
Australian
expensive
beef.
steaks in high quality restaurants. That's where that's going.
Of course it is. And the American public doesn't get to eat that quality food.
And
What
that
they
is
get to eat is overly processed garbage that probably comes from China or someplace else, or it starts in America, goes to China, comes back to America, ends up at the dollar store.
we are the domesticated animal.
We are the recycling bin. Yes, we are the recycling bin of corporate waste. And that corporate waste is the industrial food complex, in which uses food as a commodity and a subsidy so they can get the highest yields and they get the highest profit margins based on your consumption model. So going back to that, we are creating the consumer demand. Nothing will ever change until the individual goes out there and says, I'm going to create a new consumer demand. It doesn't matter how much you yell from a rooftop or a mountaintop. They're going to keep on doing the same thing until you quit buying their products.
I think this is why people won't change
No, they won't. And that's
because
fine. That's up to them. But
it's
I guarantee
some
you,
of us
I know the
change.
roadmap. They do.
Some of us
But I
change,
guarantee
but
you, the roadmap is already out there in front of us. We already
um,
know what happens to people that are sick, especially in the last 2 years. People were sick already.
self-responsibility is very difficult. I mean, you have to find that in you.
Yes.
There's nobody that's going to find that in you but you. So when you do become responsible, and the thing is, like, I've looked at the world as though it's a reflection of me, and vice versa for at least 20 years since I started reading the Jiddu Krishnamurti. I'm like very much like spiritual, philosophical kind of guy,
Okay.
and I go from all over the place, from the Bible to Buddha,
Cool.
and like Krishnamurti is just like this kind of anti-establishment sort of philosopher. He's anti-religious institutions,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely not anti-religious behavior. Definitely for finding the oneness, you know.
Yeah.
And so the world is me. I am the world. Like I find this is a flaw that I find in libertarians that don't understand that principle too, is though the
Mm-hmm.
state is this big enemy that was not created by us.
Yeah.
We are the state. The state is you. So
Pretty
if you
much.
so if you want to ignore it, not vote, just talk shit about the government on Twitter, and I mean, I understand not voting for president, but guess what? There's ballot measures that you can organize with your community and get on the ballot, and that could actually change the trajectory of, let's say, agriculture in your state.
Yeah.
But people ignore
I
that.
agree with you there 100%. Localization of your political views is one of the smartest things you could do right now.
Go
And what
down
we
the
did,
ballot, fill in everything but the president.
yeah,
But vote, man.
yeah.
And then
And
organize something with your community to get your
that's where it all
politics changed.
starts, because we keep looking at this worldview thinking, I'm going to change the world by giving a shit what China does. Now, you go down in whatever county you live in and you see what's going on, and you get in the middle of it and make it part of your accountability. And like you just said, I mean, the accountability mirror in this country right now is non-existent on many fronts. And it's especially not there whenever it comes to our consumption of food. And, if you really dive down into the food intelligence, I've been doing this for 3 years, on the road for 3 years. I've gone to the food programs, community food programs, community church around programs, child meal programs in schools. I mean, I've gone on harvest. I've gone in, I know the chemical companies. I know the grain companies. I know many ranchers across the United States. What we're trapped in is basically a consumption model that was engineered basically with not nutrition in mind. Did it start out nefarious? Don't know. Has it gotten to a place where it's basically becoming somewhat of a societal genocide? You damn right it is. Whenever you look at a country and you can go out there, I could get on Fox News right now and I could bring up an article of the Washington Post, okay? If we're going to get politics and media. The Washington Post during COVID said our kids are getting chubby. And what it is, 46% of our children between the ages of 5 and 11 right now in the United States are obese or overweight. And some of them are, well, not some of them, a percentage of them are suffering from fatty liver disease. And 1 out of 2 of them are diabetic or going diabetic. That's children that are 5 years old that will never escape that disease. And it's a metabolical disease. And we have a country that does not pay attention to that. And I say it to everybody, that is a genocide until people quit playing politics with their food consumption. And when they really look at it from a non-idealistic viewpoint, they'll understand that we're kind of trapped in a consumption model that does not, and it is not going to fare well for us. No matter how much you look at climate change or trying to be good with your consumption, until you know who is producing your food, you're going to be trapped in a system that's been lying to you for 5 decades at the least. And people refuse to accept that. And you say cognitive dissonance. Well, how you get over cognitive dissonance is acceptance. Accept the good or the bad and move forward. And that's just something that people don't have, that accountability mirror. They don't have it in them. And they prove that every day because we're sick.
I don't know, like consistency is the other side of that I would say, but it's like intellectual consistency. What I just call it integrity. Integrity to me is your relationship to the whole, your relationship to everything, that you see yourself as a piece in the chain that comes back to you. And so it shouldn't just be your sense of integrity and consistency shouldn't be all because of your own self motivation. However, I'm a me-we type of, like, it's the shortest poem in the world, me-we, by Muhammad Ali. It's I start with me, but I always remember we. And I think I used to start with we, which is very like that socialist mind I used to have.
Yeah.
And then I really end up abusing myself because I'm not concerned enough with. But then I realize if I follow my own integrity, then it always includes we. But I got to take care of myself and make sure that I'm being consistent and whatnot. So I think that intellectual consistency is difficult. It's broken up because of the attention span. But I think I'm going to start drifting too far from what we're really talking about.
We don't have an attention span. Most people are dopamine consumers. They're not dopamine producers. And, people, that's once again, I talk about consumption models. Our consumption models based on our digital consumption is an addiction that people don't want to talk about. People can't go without their phones. They can't go without the fear porn. They can't, 78% or 70% of Americans now suffer from anxiety. That's from the CDC themselves. And so you look at the prescriptions that we're taking and everything. Well, that's based on a level of anxiety that's instilled through these apparatuses in which we consume. We don't have mind filters. We don't know how to do that. We weren't taught as human beings on how to filter out the mass amount of information that gets shoved down our eyeballs and our ears
It
every
can't be
day.
done.
No.
It's actually an overload that I think has on purpose. I'm coming to
Of
see
course it
this.
is.
Yeah, I'm coming to see it this way. I can't retain. I think I reached my data limit sometime 10 years ago or something.
Yeah, I did. I was in big tech in Austin. I tell everybody that, but I was a research
My
analyst.
brain, what my brain can
Yeah.
contain.
I know. And I
Okay.
used to work in those labs. I used to meet with Facebook and Google and YouTube and the teams and all that kind of stuff. I mean, and that's a good window of time about 10 years ago. Data was too much. And, I got out of big tech probably about 2016. And, I went my separate way.
Can you tell me, because I didn't really get into biography with you, what did you do?
Well, I started out, I used to work in some really cool startups in Austin. I started out as a networker, but then I worked in multimedia. And like I said, I became a research analyst for a telecommunications industry, and I used to work in their labs. And so I worked in the labs during fascinating times in this country whenever we were doing things to the general population. And we were experimenting with bandwidth and we were experimenting with dopamine, of course, as we all know the Facebook story, the like
Wow.
button and all that kind of stuff.
Dude.
Yeah. And so, there's so much that goes on with algorithms and artificial intelligence and predictive analysis and da 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 da. It's out of control, man. And the only thing that you can do is like, okay, man, I'm gonna go listen to freaking Leonard Skinner album or something.
Yeah.
And you just got to decrease this, on it just never stops. It is overload. But we have two generations now of children that have grown up with that device in the crib until right now that they're doing this. Right now, they're looking at you and I with that same device that they started sucking their thumb with. And it was there to pacify them. And you think that damn device in your hand is not used to pacify you and to make you dumb and to not think on your own 2 feet, then, you got another thing coming because they got big plans with it. I mean, they're going to get to where predictive marketing you're going to wake up and your little avatar is going to say, hey, you've been wearing those shoes for about 2 years now. Time for a new pair of shoes. You look good in these. Do you want me to order them? Just say yes. You say yes. And within, a day or two, here it is. Amazon's got your shoes. And so
it's starting to drive me crazy. There's too much automation. It's always directing me. It's always I'll click on something and the site will shift. It's like there's just constant automation now, and you have to wrestle it down. Because, dude, I came from the 90s. Everything was like really solidly built and simple and intuitive about how it was used.
Yeah, it was.
It's getting completely non-intuitive.
Well, there was a lot
trying
more
to flow you. It's just trying to direct you the whole time now.
It is. And that's where you get the metaverse and all that kind of crap that's going on,
So, all right. So I always try to hit an hour. And so I want to start bringing this, try to consolidate.
Yeah.
Because I definitely think that we ought to be like, this is the message that could get us killed. If you try to unite people. That's
we're not. Yeah, what I'm doing
thing.
is not safe. I mean, I knew that a long time ago. But what it is,
decentralization is something that I really believe is ultimately the left. If you talk to communists, like I just got into a spat with some communists on Twitter. Yes, I didn't realize what I was getting into. These people are vicious.
They are. They're mean.
Yeah, and they're not very sympathetic to the idea of decentralization. They're not interested in that.
Their nihilism and narcissism, atheism. Is unprecedented.
Yeah. So outside of like certain people who somehow really believe in central power being the solution, Outside of them, the vast majority of people, I think, understand shop local, buy local, eat clean food, have clean air, clean
Yeah.
soil. And we may argue about how to do it, but we all got to agree that that's what we want. And then listen to you and others about why, like, we haven't talked about it. So my bad. I never even asked you, how do you replenish soil with the animals?
Well, we call the animal, the cattle is a land tool. Okay. What you do is in regenerative farming and practices, you can use a lot of different animals to graze the grass, the forage, basically. Sometimes it's weeds, sometimes it's grass. Cows know what to eat. They have this craving, and they go and they basically they manicure the land. And then with that grass they do consume, they turn it into fertilizer, and they replenish the land with the fertilizer, in which they just processed the biology from that soil that comes way down. You have a universe of species that lives in the soil. And basically, what we've done is depleted that, all you vegans and vegetarians, with all the herbicides, all the pesticides, all the chemicals that we have been spraying on our farmland in the United States. We've killed the soil because we till it up. We don't let that universe live as it should. So therefore, our vitamins and our minerals have been stolen out of that soil. Well, cattle, goats, lamb, sheep, chicken, animals go through and they rebuild that soil with consuming the grass and then fertilizing it. And that's called rotational grazing. And what you do is, the thicker the forage gets throughout time, the more mature and the better quality of soil that you get. Therefore, the vitamins and minerals have a chance, that universe of biology that is underneath the ground itself gets to flourish. And whenever it flourishes, it releases those vitamins and minerals into that forage, the grass, the weeds, whatever it is that the animals are consuming. That gets placed into the animal. The animal processes it. It becomes strong and powerful as a bull or a cow is. And then we eat basically the grass and the forage by consuming the animal. Therefore, you have a cycle. It's an energy cycle that never ends. And what it is, it's a cycle of energy that is recycled through the cow, through the human, and through the soil, and it never ends.
And the trick here is you cannot achieve that with giant rows of corn
No,
and
no.
and no animals. You can't achieve that. Well, okay, every farm
Mm,
legally has to have some animals. That's something I learned because I used to live on a farm. It was a tree farm, and he had to have some livestock. But
every state's different, and it just
oh,
depends on if
this is Oregon, I guess.
USDA, just all kinds of, yeah, you're right. So
It's generally there's going to be, but anyway, we had llamas and sheep,
mhm.
and it was mostly a tree farm, but it was great to have these sheep going around, creating past, like, space, fields, and then, but like we also had a vegetable garden, and so all of that manure that collected would get distributed into the garden, and then at some point we had too much, so he started selling it off to people in the
Sure.
area. And then we, one person, I grew enough food for, like during the summer, I'd be coming over to people's houses with vegetables and way more than I can eat. And it's just like, this is just a simple 50-acre farm with 3 men living on it. And we were able to make enough manure with just a handful of sheep, just like less than
Mhm.
10,
Yeah.
and and make delicious food with well water. And this was in the city limits of Portland.
Yeah.
This is not a wild, far-fetched dream, you
No,
know.
it's not. But once again, they've separated us from history. They separated us of the knowledge of what truly food is. They separate, people call soil dirt. Well, it's not. Dirt is not soil. But, that separation of understanding the cycle, in which this earth functions, and the cycle of which animals are attached and are part of the ecosystem, and that you basically, to kill a cow is to save a cow. And people can't wrap their head around it because they have this idealistic view that, death is bad, and death is not bad. It's part of life. Without life, you have no death. Without death, you have no life. And so once again, our society is basically, it's stuck in this idealistic social engineering aspect. And if anybody that truly is a vegan really, really cares about the earth and climate change, then they wouldn't eat any vegetable that comes from monocropping. And, we can talk about that in a different podcast, but you know how many millions upon millions of animals that get killed every year during harvest on a monocrop? Little bunnies and little foxes and all kinds of bird species and all kinds of different animals get totally wiped out. And that's something that the vegetarians and vegans have refused. And of course, PETA, they'd never go there because that would not fit their narrative. It doesn't fit their signal. So if you're willing to base,
yeah.
Go
I just
ahead.
want to say I'm going to call you out on generalizing, like you said, we always do,
Mhm.
because I definitely know lots of vegetarians and progressives who are always trying to buy local farms.
Sure. Yeah, me too. 100%. And it's a very good, I have no problem with it. But what I'm saying, if you're going to sit here and saying that you got to eliminate the consumption of beef and that the path forward is vegetarianism and veganism
without addressing the farming practices,
right,
then
without
yeah,
addressing farming practices, and then you're way off base, man, because you're going to starve just as much as anybody else. And if you look, I saw a report, I can't remember what it was, but is now 6 pounds of spinach are required to match the same nutritional value of 1 pound of spinach just 20 years ago. And that's because our soil is dead. And because it's
yeah.
grown with genetically modified seeds or the herbicides, the pesticides, all the chemicals that are used to grow that vegetable is basically depleted the nutritional value of any of that type of produce that everybody says is going to be better than a piece of steak.
I basically take vitamins because I know that the vegetables that I'm eating are mostly for the fiber and not really,
Yeah, well, I just eat beef and I get everything I need because I know exactly where that beef came from. And I guarantee you, I can eat 1 pound of beef a day. And I'm never hungry. I'm as healthy as a horse. I got my blood work. So I have no issues, man. I don't have any heart problems. And I'm not hardcore. I eat beef and I'll eat avocado. I'll eat this and that, asparagus. But one thing, 90% of my consumption model is basically pure animal protein. And I know exactly where it came from. And I know the soil that it was raised on.
So I have a dream. This was the
Mhm.
dream, the pre-pandemic dream. It's still the same.
Right.
I have shifted gears just because opportunities in life, whatever, just sometimes things don't happen exactly when you want. But it is to just have a few acres. I really believe 2 is enough to get started,
Of
or to
course it
do
is.
2 is enough to have some basic animals, um, have a badass garden, and and then go out with a rifle and hunt once or twice a year. If not that, then trade with a local
Sure.
farmer from what I
Barter.
produce.
Yeah. Peer to peer
And
transactional system.
oh man, this lamp is totally glitching out, but
You're the only one seeing it. I'm
you
not
don't see
seeing
it?
any.
Okay, good,
No,
good.
you're good.
It's driving me nuts. It's like having a strobe light in my face. But
Right.
the computer is thankfully like adjusting the light like immediately. But okay. So yeah, it's not it's 2 to 5 acres would be enough for me to accomplish this project. And I think I lost my train of thought, but that is what I want to see. And
I do hear that a lot from a lot of people. I
um
do. I mean, and it's a good dream there.
but
It's a
just
good.
imagine, this is as decentralized as it gets.
Mhm.
Imagine, like, even this. Why is it that nobody on their front stoop, we have 100 homes on one city block here where I live in Philly. We're talking row homes. You probably don't see that too much. But you've been all over the place, so you know what
I
density
know what
looks
you
like.
yeah. Mhm.
Um, not I think I was the only one producing any food. I have a rain barrel water collector as well, just
Mhm.
to collect, water for my. I don't make food anymore on my patio. It just wasn't very good. It didn't work out very well. Growing in a box on a concrete slab, it's just not as good as. Just didn't. It wasn't worth the time. Put it that way. But it can be done. I definitely proved I could grow some things on there. And if everybody did that on their block, and then everybody with 2 acres had a garden and food growing out of it, imagine just how much less exporting and importing would need to be done. The market would adjust. The market would shift if this is the consumer decision that people made along with that decision. But it's that simple. It's taking self-responsibility.
Once again, we always trying to save the world. You know, what I'm trying to do is save myself with the intention of knowing that I only receive unless I give first. And if everybody would give back to their community first, they would receive from their community. And that means doing exactly what you talked about. And, you know, not everybody's going to have this option. And it is a generalization that everybody across the world has got to do this. No, there's going to be people that will never escape the consumption model and industrial food complex as is. But there are people, vegetarians, vegans, and people that eat meat that basically are on the same page, and they don't need to be arguing with each other about what is right, vegetables or beef. It has nothing to do with it. What it's about is pure food, again, that's not controlled as a commodity subsidized asset that the global one world food group thinks that they have the power for you to basically listen to what they say because they know best. They don't know best. They never have. And all they do is know about profit and power. And you look at the source of the seed of where basically the seed truly comes from and who controls the seed of the world, then you're getting in some food intelligence. And that's where I started with all of this, is writing a Substack. And I'm going to plug myself. It's texasslim.substack.com. And then you can start there and you can start getting some food intelligence. And you'll see on that Substack that this is not a carnivore versus veganism thing. I'm from Texas. I eat beef. And I don't care if you're in Asia. I've been all over Asia. And a lot of those people, all they eat is vegetables because that's what they have market access to. So once we start understanding that this is how we used to eat, was decentralized. It's only been centralized on the massive scale that it is in the last 50 years. And that was because the US dollar got debased and we created a bunch of fake commodities to circumvent and basically create a new fake value within our food system, a new fake value in our dollar system. You can find the correlation with our health, with our food supply, with our debasement of the US dollar. They're all the same. And here we are. We're at the pinnacle of massive inflation, and we're at the pinnacle of our food being absolutely horrible. But people still consume it because they say it tastes good and it makes them feel good because it is nothing more than a drug. You have to eat every 4 hours, and everybody is stuck in that metabolical circle that basically has them eating their own tail.
This is, I feel like this should be something we all agree on, whether or not our personal choice of eating meat or not.
Yeah, it's not that argument.
I would like to get really deep into agriculture. Not now. I'm thinking about having getting like a vegetable farmer, like, you know, somebody like a proper farmer. I'm going to try to find one. Would you be like
a monocropper or like a true farmer?
A true farmer.
Okay,
if I could find someone, would you join?
Real quick. I'll tell you somebody to get a hold of on Twitter. Okay. And it's Shishi at Shishi, SHI.
Okay.
So get a hold of him. He knows biology.
All right.
He knows how to grow some stuff.
Cool.
He'd be a great person on the podcast. He does a lot of podcasts. He's very informative. He's an educator. He knows what he's talking about. And, you know, we know each other. He's been on my podcast earlier on. So he'd be a great start for sure.
All right. I would definitely bring you back on for that. Maybe I definitely think I should have more multi-person conversations.
You should do that first, and then we can come back. I'll tell you what, read The Harvest of Deception on my Substack. I cannot recommend it enough. It's the very first article I wrote. Yeah. That's how I started all of this signal, was through that one article. Harvest of Deception at texasslim.substack.com.
All right. That's a good plug. And you can find, here's your at Modern T Man. Find him there. Anything else you want to mention?
Yeah, actually, we're about to have my third conference this year at the Beef Initiative. It's a Beef Initiative Food Intelligence Summit. It's at White Oak Pastures in Bluffton, Georgia. And if you don't know who White Oak Pastures is, and you want to learn about soil and regenerative farming and ranching for the animal and produce, then we're going to have a 3-day summit in Bluffton, Georgia. You can go to beefinitiative.com and get your tickets. It's going to be something that's pretty powerful as far as understanding what food is, what regenerative farming and ranching is. We're going to have Bitcoin education. We're going to talk about family. We're going to talk about medical. We're going to talk about nutrition, all of the above. So it's a lifestyle, and a lot of people just don't realize it yet.
All right. So if you're out here on the East Coast, where you can fly in or whatever,
Yep,
consider it. I would love to be there. I would love to be everywhere. It's so hard. There's so many things to do.
It is. Stay busy though.
Yeah,
we stay busy, right?
Yeah, that's what makes life worth living.
Yeah, it is.
All right, it's been great having you. I'm going to take you off the stream.
I appreciate you reaching out, Shawn. Really do.
Absolutely.
Thanks for making this happen.
Thank you for joining me. It's been great.
You bet.
If you want to talk at all more, you can stay on the stream, but I'm going to take you off the official stream here and say goodbye to the people.
Hey.
All right. Thanks
Check you later, people. Peace.
All right. There you have it. It's like 1 hour is great, but you know that you could go for hours on this kind of topic. And I think that both of us have a lot in our minds about it. And it would be great to talk more and go really deep into agriculture from his perspective with someone else. We'll see what I manifest in that regard. But I appreciate anybody who's tuned in live. I'm sorry that I don't know why y'all didn't go to the YouTube chat. Man, you're missing out. We could have had some questions answered, but I hope this was a good conversation without that kind of interruption. And that's it. Thank you for being here. Love you all.